Hello and welcome to our analysis of iCAT19. So at this stage we have started moving towards the countdown of the last 6-7 mocks in our 25 set all India level national mock test series. You would have taken the first 18 mocks or at least most of them by now. If you would have seen the sequence from iCAT 16 to 18 in the last 10, you would have noticed that 16 and 17 were relatively easier, whereas 18 was slightly tougher compared to them or to the actual CAT. Let's have a look at iCAT 19 first from a difficulty point of view and see how it rated compared to the earlier mocks as well as to the actual CAT. So iCAT 19 was rated as a moderate to tough mock with an average LOD of a little more than 2, that's 2.05. What does that mean? We assign an LOD of 1, 2 or 3 to each question ranging from easy to difficult. So each question, section or mock has an average LOD assigned to it. So using that parameter, iCAT 19 was a little more than moderate. Hence we've called it moderate to tough. Broadly speaking, I would say that it was possibly 6 to 7% tougher than what you can expect in the actual exam. Let's move section by section, starting with verbal ability, typically the first section in the exam. Here, verbal ability as far as this mock is concerned was the nightmare section in terms of not only verbal but for this mock also. Among all the verbal ability sections that you would have seen so far, this was by far the toughest, and I can guarantee you that the remaining mocks will not have a section as tough as this. This particular section was simply designed to give you a taste of what it would be to have a nightmare verbal section in the exam. So there was only one other mock where we really had a tough verbal section earlier. So we've kept 2 mocks out of 25 where the VA section is really tough. Here the average LOD of this section was nearly 2.25, which is generally close to what you can expect in DILR, not verbal. Verbal is close to 1.9. So if I look at verbal, it was nearly 20% tougher than what you could expect in the exam. So the attempts that I mentioned here will not be very applicable to an actual CAT. Yes, if this was the difficulty level, say in an outlier CAT or in a monster CAT with this kind of verbal, then these attempts would suffice. What was the structure of this section? As always, 6 RCs, 6 into 2 plus 4 into 3, that's 2 6 question RCs, the rest being 3 question RCs. Here with this kind of a difficult section, we cannot expect to have any single easy RC as was the case here. So there were 2 RCs which could strictly be called moderate, 2 that were moderate to tough and 2 that were tough. So you had everything skewed towards the tougher end of the scale. In these kind of cases, as I have explained in one of the earlier mocks, you need to look at the topics first and decide which ones you want to tackle. Let's have a look at these topics. So you had one on Bosnia and the conflicts within it, one on religion, one on the idea of the universe, then quantum physics, psychoanalytic experience and paradoxes in reading. If you look at all these topics, there's more or less a lot of liberal arts background sprinkled throughout it. This is a very deliberate strategy that we've done as far as this particular mock is concerned, to give you a feel of what a tough verbal section would look like if it is based on some of the earlier actual CATs that we used to encounter in the 2010 to 13 era. Now, what do you do in such a case? Here, I would not recommend any single RC that you should have attempted. Rather, look at areas that you are comfortable reading. Else, in each of these, there might be a one-off factual question or there might be a one-off easy question. Try and identify that and try to get 6 to 8 attempts somewhere from these questions. Having done that and spent nearly 45 minutes on RC, you need to go to the non-RC or theta or numerical entry questions which were typically the usual stuff, that's para-jumbles, para-summary and contextual odd man out. Here again there were no real easy questions, however I can say that para-jumbles and contextual odd man out were broadly moderate. So in this case you could have smartly selected questions and done 3 to 4 questions very well had you spent some time on it. Broadly I would say if you were looking at verbal ability, here the best chance to increase your marks would have been the numerical entry questions with 3 to 4 good attempts, and try and get 6 to 7 attempts in the RC section and reach a total of 10. 10 attempts in this kind of a monster section would be reasonably good. As far as the exam is concerned, I personally do not expect the section to be so tough. This was a one-off section simply designed to give you an experience of a very tough verbal section. Let's now move on to DILR, which is typically of this difficulty level, but in this exam it was slightly lower than what you would see in the exam. So in this mock the average difficulty was 2.13, close to 2.15, whereas in the exam you will find it at 2.2 to 2.25. So what should have been your attempts? We typically tell people to attempt between 16 to 20 questions, that's 4 to 5 sets. Here with the difficulty going down a bit, I would have tried and attempted 5 sets. For that I first need to identify which are the 3 top sets or 3 easiest sets that I should look out for. Which were the sets that I should have definitely attempted? So there was one set on multiple graphs in terms of sales in denims. This was similar to what you would generally find in NMAT. Now not exactly an NMAT level set, it was a CAT level set, but the styling was similar to NMAT and this is something you should have definitely attempted. Then there was a matrix based set, a standard matrix based set which you should have tried. It would have taken a little bit of time, but yes, once done you would have got full marks for it. The third set was on labeling of 5 objects, which was more of a true false kind of a thing where the labels and the contents do not match. This was fairly easy, conditional questions, but you could have done it with a little bit of common sense and writing down the labels and the contents. That was fairly easy. The last was one on doctors and nurses. Again, this was a pure DI set. A little bit of calculation could have been made easy with respect to the calculator available. So this was the 4th set that I would have attempted. Apart from this, there were 2 other sets which were lengthy really, but could have been done had you struggled to understand one of the above 4 sets. So there was one set where you had to fit in 9 people in 3 cars. It was more of an arrangement and a grouping kind of a question. There, if you got the combinations right, you got the groupings right, you would have got full marks. So it was typically the kind of set for a student who didn't understand the concepts of the first 4 but can work hard and try and get this set right, spend 20 minutes, get all 4. So in such a section, even that strategy can help you. Similarly, the next set on the football tournament also was of this type, where you could spend some time, fill in the entire data and move on. So these 2 sets would have been my backup set. Had I included them in my main chunk, I would have lost a lot of time. So these are my backup sets which I would have done had I not been able to attempt some of the sets that I mentioned above. But broadly, I believe that you could have easily attempted 5 full sets here in this mock. The first 4 that I mentioned and one of the backups, one of the 2 backups that I mentioned. 20 attempts would be a good performance as far as this section is concerned. Finally, let's move on to quant. Typically the easiest section of the mock as well as the exam. Here again quant was easy with an average LOD close to 1.75, so it was easy to moderate. Generally, as you can see, in quant you have close to 12 attemptable easy questions which are short attempts. Always try and identify them first. Here we have identified close to 14 such questions. And again I keep telling people to also identify the chunks where these questions are located. In this particular mock, if you see, From question number 69 to 78, which means a chunk of 10 questions, you had 7 of them which were doable. Post that, you really had the next chunk from 88 to 95, which means in a set of 8, you had 6. The rest would have been slightly difficult. So you needed to identify these chunks. Secondly, what was the kind of spread in terms of the broad topics? If I look at arithmetic, I can see that there were hardly any arithmetic questions. I could identify only 2 of the arithmetic questions which were easier. So that inverts the whole logic where we say arithmetic is easy. Here, only 2 of the arithmetic questions were really easy. What about algebra for that matter? In terms of pure algebra, there were close to again 3 questions that were doable. So out of the 14, my 2 big areas, arithmetic and algebra, correspond to only 5. Whereas geometry and modern math really give me somewhere around, I am able to easily count 8 to 9 questions here. So if 9 out of 14 are from geometry and modern math, then that is where I should be scoring a lot of marks. If you're weak in one of those, you would have struggled in these. If you saw iCAT19, you would have realized that their arithmetic gave you a lot of marks. So you need to try and build up capabilities in all 4 areas. Broadly here, 19 to 20 attempts was possible. 19 attempts would be a good performance. In general, if I look at this mock, the overall difficulty level of this mock was probably around 10% higher than the actual CAT. This was predominantly because of a monster verbal section which was 20 odd % tougher than CAT, a DILR section which was marginally simpler, and a quant section which was more or less at par. The number of good attempts in this mock would have been close to 48. So anywhere between 47 to 49 attempts would be a good performance. Wish you all the best. Hope to see you again when we release the analysis for iCAT20. Do well. You can subscribe to more videos of this type on our official channel. Thank you and wish you all the best.